Never was so much owed by so many to so few. The Battle of Britain, July 10th to September 17th, 1940. In context, focus, war in the air. Before, 1933, Nazis started to build up the Luftwaffe illegally. 1935, British invent a working form of radar. 1936, first flight of Spitfire prototype. After, May 1941, Blitz peters out as German air power is redirected to the Eastern Front. 1942, beginning of UK's strategic air offensive against Nazi Germany. March 1944, American long-range fighters deplete the Luftwaffe. April 1944, German Me-262 jet fighter enters service. 1954, last operational sortie by an RAF Spitfire. The Battle of Britain was a struggle for control of the skies above Britain, and crucially the English Channel fought in several phases between June and September 1940. With the fall of France, Britain tensed for invasion by sea and air. On July 16th, Hitler issued Directive No. 16 on preparations for a landing operation against England. His generals were instructed to put together an invasion plan, Operation Sea Lion. Its guiding assumption was that any chance of success for an amphibious landing depended on Luftwaffe bombers chasing away the British Royal Navy, as they had done with some success in Norway, and this in turn depended on first securing air superiority. As Hitler commanded, the British Air Force must be eliminated to such an extent that it will be incapable of putting up substantial opposition to the invading troops. Outwardly calm, inwardly anxious covers the general tone of today. British Mass Observation Survey recorded on May 19th. Luftwaffe versus RAF. Goring assured his leader that the Luftwaffe would smash the RAF, and he had some grounds for confidence. At the start of the battle, the Germans had around 1,300 bombers and dive bombers and about 900 single-engine and 300 twin-engine fighters. This force was set against about 650 planes at the disposal of RAF Fighter Command. However, several important factors now mitigated against the Luftwaffe. Previously, it had operated close to its own bases as an armed blitzkrieg in support of ground and naval forces. During this campaign, Junker's 87th Stuka bombers had achieved great speed by diving from height. Now operating without ground support and further from their home bases, they would have to fly on the level and thus much more slowly. The Messerschmitt Me-109, though superior in many respects to RAF fighters, had a small fuel tank that allowed it to spend just 30 minutes in British airspace. Meanwhile, British pilots were shot down and survived might be back in the air later the same day. The impact of radar. Perhaps more significantly, Fighter Command was able to marshal its scanty resources highly effectively because it had advanced warning of attacks thanks to intelligence, especially radio direction fighting, RAF, later known as radar, which had been developed just before the war began. The chain-home network of radar stations which had been established around the British coast fed into a sophisticated command and control system that more than doubled the intercept fate of fighter squadrons. The first phase of the battle started on July 10th as the Luftwaffe began bombing British shipping and ports. German planes from 3 Luftwaffe operated from 50 bases in northern France and Holland. Opposing them were the 52 squadrons of RAF Fighter Command led by Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding. It took as little as 6 minutes for remedy aircraft to cross the English Channel. Even with radar early warning, it took 4 minutes to deliver the scramble message to mobilize and another 13 minutes for Spitfires to reach intercept altitude. Fighter Command wanted to avoid falling victim to bluffs designed to lure planes away from defending airfields. As a result, dispatching interceptors in small squadrons was 12 planes, whereas the smallest Luftwaffe unit was the group of 30 aircraft. Only later in the battle, as the prediction of bomber attacks improved with time, did Fighter Command start to assemble a big wing based out of Duxford. 5 squadrons of Hurricanes and Spitfires working together. Intensified attacks. Initially, the Luftwaffe targeted Channel shipping, hoping to draw the RAF into wasting its resources on escort missions. The Luftwaffe sank 33,000 tons of shipping, but this was only a tiny fraction of the tonnage passing through the channel every week. By the end of July, it was clear that Sea Lion was not progressing and it was time for the Luftwaffe to increase the intensity. On August 1st, Hitler signaled the immense Wirtschaft Luftkrieg, intensive air war, with Directive Number 17. The Luftwaffe is to overcome the English Channel force with all means at its disposal in the shortest possible time. The attacks are to be primarily directed against the planes themselves. This plan made sense, but in the end, it didn't materialize. The air war did indeed intensify as the second phase of the Battle of Britain began on August 8th, but it was across a broad front with multiple dispersed targets as the Luftwaffe launched a mass of virtually continuous bombing attacks. There were 1,485 sorties on the first day, rising to 1,786 by August 13th. The Germans called August 13th Adlertag, Day of the Eagle. They marked it as the true start of the Battle of Britain, for this was the day they intended to begin targeting airfields. Despite flying nearly 1,500 sorties that day, German pilots were hampered by poor weather and unclear orders. Luftwaffe lost 46 planes to 13 losses for the RAF. Radar was demonstrating its value. According to RAF Wing Commander Max Aitken, radar really won the Battle of Britain. We wasted no petrol, no energy, no time. In contrast, the German effort was hamstrung by poor intelligence, which wildly overestimated RAF losses and Luftwaffe's successes. Aerial dogfights. Range limitations on German fighter planes such as Dornier Do 17 meant that much of the dogfighting was concentrated over southeast England. The combat was brutal and desperate. Although the Me-109 was slightly faster and better at diving and climbing than the RAF fighters, the turning circle was not as tight, and German pilots complained that they could not pin down the British Hurricanes and Spitfires. The third phase of the battle began on August 24th as the Luftwaffe finally concentrated its firepower on bombing air bases, as it should have done to begin with. Fleets of 80 to 100 German bombers, accompanied up by 100 fighters, battered British bases as Biggin Hill, Manston, and Lympne. On August 30th, for instance, the Luftwaffe flew 1,345 sorties, and the RAF was stretched to a breaking point. It lost 39 fighter planes the following day. That month, 304 British pilots were killed or wounded. Some pilots were sent up with only 20 hours of training, but another strategic error by Hitler offered them respite. The British had an extraordinary advantage which we could never overcome throughout the entire war. Colonel Adolf Galland, German fighter ace on radar. Bombing cities. On August 24th, a Heinkel HE-111 bomber, possibly lost, had dropped its bombs on the city of London, and RAF responded with a series of raids on Berlin on August 25th through the 29th. Hitler, who had promised the German people that their capital would be protected, was goaded into a furious mistake, thundering on September 4th that, "When they declare that they will attack our cities, then we will eradicate their cities." The Luftwaffe objectives were abruptly altered from bombing airfields to bombing cities. The Blitz had begun, but although it was not clear at the time, the Germans had effectively lost the Battle of Britain. On September 15th, the massive raid on London ended with the Luftwaffe losing twice as many planes as the RAF. 2 days later, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion until further notice. Although the Blitz continued, the Battle of Britain tailed off. The balance sheet of losses was appalling. Since May 1940, the Germans had lost 1,733 planes to the RAF's 915. Although these numbers would be dwarfed for the scale of air battles and losses later in the war, RAF had inflicted the first defeat on Hitler's Germany and saved Britain from the immediate threat of invasion. Hermann Göring. Born in 1893, Göring was a highly decorated World War I flying ace who became the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany. Wounded in the 23 Beer Hall Putsch, his power grew as the Nazis did. He established the Gestapo and the first concentration camps. In 1933, he took charge of the secret plan to reconstitute the Air Force, building the Luftwaffe and unleashing it to devastating effect in Poland, Norway, and France. By July 1940, Göring was Hitler's designated successor, but defeat in the Battle of Britain began a string of failures, not least his incompetent running of the German economy. He degenerated into a drug-addicted megalomaniac. With Hitler surrounded in Britain, Göring suggested that he assume control of the Reich, provoking a furious response already arrested by the SS. He escaped into Allied custody, but in 1946 was found guilty at the Nuremberg trials for crimes against humanity, having signed up to the Final Solution Plan in 1941. He escaped execution by dying by suicide.